this live stream. We're going through the workbook for students of A Course in Miracles. Now, if you're joining us here on the live for the first time, this is daily. It's a daily live stream where I'm going through my own experience with the spiritual text, the spiritual practice and thought system, A Course in Miracles. You may be familiar with it. If you are not, then I invite you to tune in anyway. If you are doing the workbook for students, which is a component of A Course in Miracles, that is fantastic. If you're not, I invite you to tune in anyway. One of the things that we're talking about here, in fact, all that we're talking about, is spirituality, universal spirituality, and A Course in Miracles is but one presentation of a universal spirituality. And it may resonate very well with you. It has for me. For the last 8 years, it has formed the basis of my own spiritual practice. And I have come from a background that's quite diverse, and maybe some of you can relate to that. I'm certain that some of you have tried a number of different spiritual traditions, religious traditions, manifestation traditions, practices, different forms of yoga or meditation. It's amazing in the 21st century that we have everything, every spiritual tradition that exists in the world at our disposal. Right now on the internet, we can find out information. We can access live streams like this, networks like Enlightened World Network. We have everything at our disposal. So it's likely that you've tried a lot of things. One of the things that I do want to point out about A Course in Miracles is that it is a self-study course. It is a self-study curriculum, not a religion, not designed to have a leader who might then concretize into a cult figure or something like that. It's self-study that we undertake on our own time, at our own pace, and it's universal spirituality. What does that mean? Well, it means the subtitle of this live stream, Awakening to Love. It's awakening to our essence, to our pure presence, who we really are. Who we really are. That is it in a nutshell. And of course, as we find in spirituality in general, the practice is not as simple as the actual essence itself. Why? Because we complicate things with our conscious mind. We complicate things by identifying with what we call the ego, a sense of separate self, separate from other people, all of us running around, living in our own worlds, seemingly, having our own experiences, seemingly, yet still interrelating to each other in many, many different ways. And calling that the world that we live in. Now, A Course in Miracles tells us that we made this world that we live in. We were not dropped here, placed here just so we could suffer. We're not placed here for theater, for beings that are supposedly higher than we are, or they can watch us go to war with each other. They can watch us batter one another physically, verbally, mentally, emotionally, all dangling us like puppets on a string. No, none of that. That's not the reality. We made this. The beauty of this, we can unmake it. A workbook for students in A Course in Miracles is a way that we can train our minds to perceive our experience differently. We're, if you want to call it cleansing, cleansing or purifying our perception, you could do that. They're all just words. What we're doing is we're awakening to love. We're learning valuable tools and valuable lessons like self-love, like forgiveness of others, of the world, especially of ourselves, because that can be a tough one, can't it, to forgive ourselves. And the workbook for students contains a daily idea, Call it a lesson if you'd like. I mean, the course does label them lessons. Today we're on lesson 43 out of 365. And it has an idea, a statement, generally a very short, succinct, brief statement. And then it gives us exercises, meditations, if you prefer, practice periods, things that we can do to apply the day's idea to our daily lives and thus change our perception, thus changing our minds. So let's go into today's idea here, lesson 43 from the workbook. God is my source. I cannot see apart from him. Very powerful, very, very powerful idea. God is my source. I cannot see apart from him. Now, if you're just tuning in for the first time, or if you've watched a couple of these lives and you're not familiar with the terminology of A Course in Miracles, that's okay. Let me just tell you that A Course uses terminology that may be familiar to those who grew up in a Judeo-Christian tradition, like God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. It also uses terminology that is familiar to a student of Eastern philosophy, such as Buddhism, terms like the ego. And it really does blend East and West. After all, spirituality is universal, doesn't actually know any distinction between East and West, because what is that? What are those? Those are terms, they're words that we human beings made up. That the experience of love, of God, is universal. So whether you call the ultimate ground of all being our essence, whether you call this essence source or God or the universe or our higher self, self with a capital S, truth with a capital T, love, whatever you call it, the Course refers to this as God. God is my source. I cannot see apart from him. So, source. Yeah, in other words, absolute truth, God is, period. Simply is. This is a statement that is made a couple of times in A Course in Miracles, and it is repeated in several other books and commentaries that people have written over the years. That is the truth. God is. And that implies that nothing else is. Just that. Just God. So, of course, it would follow in that case that we cannot see apart from God because we cannot be apart from God. Our true nature is not this compound body of flesh and blood and cartilaginous tissues, things we call ears. We're looking at a face, we're talking to each other on a computer screen, right? This is not the essence of who we are. Who we are is well, one with God. We cannot see apart from God because we cannot be apart from God. That is not possible. That is not possible. Now, we're not taught that necessarily in the world. Maybe you weren't taught that growing up. We're taught all kinds of things, and we have all kinds of concepts thrown at us about God and divinity and our own nature. We're often, and I grew up in the United States, where I was often told that God is a man in the sky. We put a human form on what doesn't have form, actually. But we were all fed in the church in my upbringing, which was the Christian tradition, we were fed the idea that God is separate from us. That's not the case. That's not the case, and this is something that we're awakening to here. And this idea helps a great deal. Doing the workbook practice periods as suggested in the commentary, in the workbook, is really wonderful because it helps us to change our perception. So the Course talks about perception and knowledge, and there is a difference in course terminology between the two, so it's worth taking a minute to explain. Perception is the way we see things in the world. It's relative truth. If you're a student of Eastern philosophy, relative truth is the idea that, well, here in the world, we are taught that we're all running around having a separate experience. This is the world of Newtonian physics, right? Of science, of verifiable scientific principles, Newtonian physics. Yeah, if you take a pen, pick it up, drop it, it's going to fall down like that. That is what we're taught in science class growing up. It's what we're taught from generations immemorial by our parents, who were taught by their parents, who were taught by their parents and their parents and their parents. And the fundamental difference between perception and knowledge is that perception comes from a standpoint of us and them, right? Me and you. There appears to be a distinction between what we call self and what we refer to as other. Now, spirituality in general, and A Course in Miracles, being part of that, teaches us, if we're willing and open to learning the lesson, that this separation is not real. Now, perception, it sees us as running all around as a supposedly independently existing self, and everyone else is having the same experience, or so we think, so we're conditioned to think, so we're conditioned to experience. So on the other hand, knowledge is simply absolute truth. It is what simply is. Now, in Eastern philosophy, this is referred to as ultimate truth, which is a term that you might like, or absolute truth, because truth is, simply is. This is the nature of who we are and who and what we're waking up to. That's knowledge, which is of God. Perception is of the world while we're still seeing ourselves as separated. So what do we do with that? Well, A Course in Miracles and the workbook exercises take us on a journey, and it really could be a journey. It really could be a wild ride. And if you've been doing this for a while, you know that it can be. Why? Because it brings up everything that we need to release. In other words, it brings up all our stuff. Brings it up by design, and if that's coming up for you, that's a good thing. You're on the path. You're on the right track. Yes, perception can be shifted. It can be changed, and it can be cleansed, purified. What we're doing is we're learning to see our own holiness. We can't see apart from God because we are not apart from God. There is no separation of any kind, and only God is. We can all do the math on that, can we not? Yes. Now, we're not conditioned to have that experience, nor even to believe that. But with exercises like this, with a spiritual practice, whether it's meditation or a traditional religion or spiritual practice, whether it's self-inquiry or yoga or whatever it looks like for you, all these ideas apply because only truth is, and it applies no matter what outward form of practice we're engaged in. Doesn't matter where we live in the world, especially in today's day and age with the internet, tools like this. This is literally an international crowd here on Enlightened World Network, which is wonderful. It doesn't matter where we are, how we were raised, what society we grew up in, what society we live in now. That doesn't matter our age, doesn't matter our gender. Truth simply is, and does not recognize any of these apparent separations at all. Love only recognizes itself. Just that. We only really, truly recognize ourselves. Just that. Today's idea helps transform perception when we work on these ideas, when we work on forgiveness. True forgiveness according to the thought system of A Course in Miracles that applies to not just other people in certain situations, but ourselves, the entire world, all situations that we find ourselves in now, that we may find ourselves in tomorrow, and that we found ourselves in yesterday, letting it all go. Very important that we forgive the past, because forgiveness is a release. It's letting it go, right? We're often told in many contexts in this world that the past does not define us. It does not define us. That's exactly correct. It does not exist. Yet we treat it as though it did. We carry in the present moment labels that are based on past experience. In fact, everything we're looking at is based on past experience. Everything, the world we see, we're actually looking at the past. This is a specific lesson in A Course in Miracles in the workbook. So we're not seeing things as they really are. We cannot truly see apart from God, because we are not apart from God. So this is a lesson that can bring up a lot of questions. And if you have them, this is a perfect time right here on the live stream while we're still live and you've got me here to ask them. And if you're catching the replay, feel free to type in the questions here. And we've got several people that are on, so thank you all for joining me here. Yes, Isabel, Lisa, hello, how are you? And Robert, hi, how are you? Deirdre, yes, yeah, Lisa, love only recognizes itself. Yes, and transform perceptions. Yeah, love only recognizes itself. Another way of looking at that is God being all that really is, only recognizes himself. We use the word him, herself, itself, whatever. Yeah. Love only recognizes itself. Yeah, that's it. Literally what this means, and this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Literally, it is not capable of recognizing all of our divisions of hatred, of fear, of special, what the Course calls special relationships, where we esteem some people or some things and not others. We reserve our judgment for certain people that we deem to be opposed to us or below our level, or whatever we think of as our level. But yeah, so we can forgive some people, but not others. No, none of that, right? Love blanket forgives and doesn't even recognize the differences in the first place, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. That is absolute. Yes. And yeah, forgiveness is release. Yes. And yeah, so here's a very, very beautiful quote, Lisa, that I've seen you use this week, and I love it. I want to share this here if we can. Yeah, forgiveness is a release. It's the fragrance the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it. Yes, so think of the image of kids playing. Lisa, this is the way you used it. Yes. I don't remember exactly where it was, but the idea is there are children playing and they come upon a field of violets, and in their joy, in their energy, in their zest and exuberance, they crush the violets and it releases a fragrance, right? Like crushing herbs to steep in tea or something. It releases the fragrance and forgiveness. The violets, well, forgive the children for living, and we're going to release our fragrance. That is the forgiveness. It's a very, very beautiful image. Yeah. So thank you so much for adding that in the comments and for sharing that. Yes. Yeah, and Robert writes, yes, it's in giving that we receive. Yeah, in terms of forgiveness. That is so true, right? Yes, this is another fundamental principle of A Course in Miracles, that giving is receiving. And we're taught that in certain arenas in life. Maybe you were taught that more than other people growing up. I don't know. But in the world, often people have a hard time giving, therefore they have a hard time forgiving, right? Because we think that to give something away leaves us lacking. We're so conditioned to a sense of lack that people are stingy with their gifts because it feels like a sacrifice to them. It feels like they're out something. If I give somebody 20 bucks, and a lot of people's thinking is, oh, you're out 20 bucks. But they don't actually think about what you gain. I mean, you actually gain by giving. You actually learn by teaching. This is how This is how awakening actually happens, is we make a decision to choose love. We choose love in the present moment, and then we show up and we extend it. In other words, we give, we share, we always receive back. Now, there is no pool of finite resources, so we're not competing for a percentage of anything that's limited and finite. Love, truth is completely unlimited, completely without limits. Yeah. So this is very, very wonderful. This is a powerful and profound lesson in the workbook. And I want to thank all of you who have joined me live. If you're catching the replay, thank you for tuning in. Feel welcome to leave comments here for me, because I'm happy to answer them. And if you have a question, let me know. I'm here doing this live stream to be a resource to you. This is one of the ways that I'm honored to be able to give back to the entire world, everyone that's tuning in here to the network. So if this is something that you're enjoying, feel welcome to hit that share button, to share the programming of Enlightened World Network with your friends, with your family members. The more people we can reach, the better. So quick announcement before we wrap up here is this weekend, this Saturday, March 20th and Sunday, March 21st, I will not be going live here on the stream. I'm taking 2 days off so that Enlightened World Network can launch the EWN One with the Earth channel. There is a special slate of programming for Saturday, the 20th of March and Sunday, the 21st of March here. And I will be taking a 2-day break from this live stream. However, I will be back here tomorrow, and then I will be back after the weekend. We've got quite a lineup of heavy hitting and really beautiful and uplifting lessons. It's both heavy hitting and beautiful and uplifting all at the same time from the workbook for students. I'm behind the scenes lining up a number of guest speakers. I've had 3 people come in so far on the live and share their experience with this wonderful spiritual text, and I will be having more. So I will see you back here tomorrow. Thank you all very much for joining me here today, and I will talk to you